My name is Sarah, and 25 years ago, I thought I was marrying my best friend. Tonight, at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where David proposed on a snowy February evening, I realized I'd been living with a stranger all along. The evening started beautifully. Our daughter Emma, now 23 and fresh from Northwestern Law School, had flown in from Chicago specifically to celebrate with us. She looked absolutely radiant in her navy designer dress that complemented her intelligent hazel eyes, her father's eyes, and my stubborn chin. Her auburn hair, a shade darker and richer than mine used to be before the gray started creeping in, was swept back in an elegant French twist that made her look older, more sophisticated, more like the successful lawyer she was destined to become. David wore his expensive Armani suit, the charcoal one with subtle pinstripes that he saves for important clients and special occasions, and I'd splurged on a new emerald silk dress from Nordstrom that complemented my graying auburn hair. At age 52, I'd finally learned to embrace the silver threads that caught the restaurant's warm lighting and gave me what Emma called distinguished elegance. To 25 years of marriage, David raised his wine glass, a 2018 Barolo he'd specifically requested from the sommelier, his voice carrying across our corner table with its crisp white tablecloth, gleaming silver, and single red rose centerpiece. But something felt fundamentally off, like a discordant note in an otherwise perfect symphony. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and there was a coldness I couldn't place, like winter seeping through closed windows on what should have been a warm celebration. The restaurant buzzed with quiet conversations and the gentle clinking of silverware against fine china. Soft jazz played overhead, Miles Davis's Kind of Blue I recognized from our early dating days, and the dim amber lighting cast dancing shadows across the white tablecloths. Crystal glasses sparkled under the soft chandelier light, and the rich scents of garlic, fresh basil, and simmering marinara filled the air. Everything should have been perfect. A celebration of a quarter-century of marriage, of building a life together, of surviving the challenges that break so many couples apart. "Mom, you look absolutely stunning tonight," Emma said warmly, squeezing my hand with genuine affection. Her touch was warm and reassuring, contrasting sharply with David's distant, almost cold demeanor. "That dress brings out your eyes beautifully, and you're practically glowing. You look happier than I've seen you in months." The irony of her words would become apparent soon enough. As our appetizers arrived, burrata with heirloom tomatoes for me, classic Caesar salad for Emma, and calamari for David, his iPhone buzzed insistently against the table. He glanced at it quickly, and I caught a glimpse of a name, Jessica, along with a heart emoji before he quickly flipped it face down. My stomach tightened involuntarily, that familiar knot of anxiety I'd been experiencing more frequently lately. Jessica was his new junior associate, 28 years old, with platinum blonde hair, ambitious blue eyes, and legs that seemed to go on forever in her designer suits. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light and conversational, while my heart began to race with unnamed dread. "Just work stuff," he muttered dismissively, not meeting my gaze, his fingers drumming impatiently on the white tablecloth. But it wasn't just work, and somewhere deep in my heart, I knew it. Over the past 6 months, David had been working late more frequently, taking mysterious calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room, and treating me like a convenient roommate rather than his beloved wife. Don't forget to let me know where you're watching this story from, and if you're enjoying it, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories. What my daughter said next will shock you. He'd stopped touching me casually. No more hand-holding during our Friday night movies. No more quick goodbye kisses before leaving for work. No more surprise hugs from behind while I cooked dinner. The intimacy that had sustained us through raising Emma, through his law school struggles, through my career changes, had evaporated like morning mist. Tonight, I was determined to address it directly, to fight for what we'd built together over 2.5 decades of shared life. The waiter, a distinguished gentleman with graying temples who'd been serving us for years, brought our main courses, Also, buco for David, herb-crusted salmon for Emma, and chicken marsala for me. And David immediately ordered another bottle of wine. His third glass was already empty, the expensive Barolo consumed faster than usual. The alcohol was clearly loosening his tongue in ways that made me increasingly uncomfortable and anxious. "You know, Sarah," he said, his words slightly slurred, but deliberately cruel, each syllable calculated for maximum impact. "I've been thinking extensively about what real partnership actually looks like in a modern marriage, in today's world." Emma and I exchanged worried glances across the candlelit table. There was something genuinely ominous in his tone, like storm clouds gathering on a previously clear and peaceful horizon. The way he said real partnership made it sound like an accusation. "What do you mean by that exactly?" I asked carefully, setting down my fork and giving him my complete attention, though every instinct told me I wouldn't like his answer. David leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine with deliberate theatrical precision, a cruel smile playing on his lips that I'd never seen before in 25 years of marriage. It was the smile of a predator who'd cornered his prey. What happened next would shatter everything I thought I knew about my marriage and reveal a truth that would change our family forever. "What I mean," David continued, his voice growing progressively louder and attracting uncomfortable attention from nearby tables, "is that I've been carrying this marriage financially for years, while you've been playing house and pretending your little hobbies actually matter in the real world." The words hit me like ice water thrown directly in my face. Several nearby diners turned to stare at us, their own conversations pausing as they sensed domestic drama unfolding in real time. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and deep confusion. Emma's jaw dropped audibly, her fork clattering against her plate with a sharp sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly tense atmosphere. "David, please," I whispered urgently, my voice barely audible. "Not here, not like this, not in public." "Why not here?" He laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and completely unfamiliar, like hearing a stranger's voice coming from my husband's mouth. "It's the absolute truth, isn't it? Let's be completely honest for once in our lives. I'm the successful corporate lawyer making partner at one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms, pulling in over $500,000 annually, while you're still working part-time at that pathetic little nonprofit, making what, $30,000 a year if you're lucky? Helping homeless people and broken women won't pay for Emma's Northwestern Law School tuition or the mortgage on our Lincoln Park house." My throat constricted as if someone was slowly squeezing it with invisible hands. For 15 years, I'd worked at Haven House, a shelter for abused women and children. It wasn't just a job. It was my calling, my purpose, the thing that gave my life meaning beyond being David's wife and Emma's mother. After Emma was born, I'd made the conscious choice to work part-time to be fully present for her childhood, to attend every soccer game and school play, to be the mother who packed homemade lunches and helped with homework every night, a decision David had not only supported but actively encouraged back then, calling me the heart of our family. "That's enough, Dad," Emma said quietly, but her voice carried a warning tone that reminded me of her childhood, the voice she used when she meant serious business. But David was either too drunk or too consumed with cruelty to heed any warnings. And "Don't even get me started on how you've completely let yourself go over the years," he continued mercilessly, his words cutting deeper with each calculated syllable. "When we married, you were this vibrant, stunning woman who turned heads when we walked into any room. Now look at you. Gray hair you stubbornly refuse to dye properly, wrinkles you won't get professionally fixed, wearing clothes from Target. And Kohl's instead of the designer brands that would appropriately complement my professional status and success." The restaurant felt completely silent around us, though I knew logically that conversations were still happening at other tables. My world had narrowed to this table, this moment, this devastating and very public humiliation. I could feel eyes boring into us from every direction, could sense smartphones being discreetly pulled out to potentially record what was clearly becoming a spectacular domestic scene. Your obsession with Haven House has completely consumed you, David pressed. On relentlessly, seemingly energized and invigorated by my obvious pain and embarrassment. You're so busy saving everyone else's broken families that you've totally neglected ours. When was the last time you cooked a proper, elaborate meal instead of ordering Chinese takeout? When did you last make a real effort for me, for us, for this marriage? When did you last care about being the kind of sophisticated wife a successful man deserves and requires? Tears stung my eyes, hot and shameful, but I absolutely refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of all these strangers, who were now witnessing the complete destruction of my marriage. Not in front of Emma, who was watching her father systematically destroy her mother with calculated, deliberate cruelty. "Dad, stop this immediately," Emma said more firmly, her voice carrying the authority she'd developed in law school, the tone of someone who knew exactly how powerful words could be as weapons. But David was beyond hearing any warnings or pleas for decency. "The truth is uncomfortable, Sarah, but it absolutely needs to be said out loud," David continued, his voice now carrying clearly across the restaurant, making our private pain into public entertainment. "I need a partner who actually matches my ambitions and understands success. Someone young, driven, sophisticated, and elegant. Someone who truly understands what real success looks like in today's competitive world. Someone who appreciates the luxurious lifestyle I've worked incredibly hard to provide." That's when I understood, with crystal clear clarity. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls that ended when I entered rooms, the emotional distance, the sudden harsh criticism of everything I was and did. Jessica wasn't just a co-worker. She wasn't just his new junior associate. She was his carefully planned escape from me, from us, from the life we'd painstakingly built together over 25 years. "Someone exactly like Jessica?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible above the restaurant's ambient noise and the thunderous pounding of my own devastated heart. David's face hardened with something that looked almost like relief that the carefully guarded truth was finally out in the open. No more pretending or hiding required. Yes, absolutely. Exactly like Jessica. She's brilliant, ambitious, and she genuinely appreciates what I've accomplished in my career. She doesn't make me feel constantly guilty for wanting success, for enjoying the finer things in life that my hard work has earned. She understands that professional image matters tremendously in my field, that perception is often reality in corporate law. The admission hung in the air like toxic poison gas, seeping into every corner of our shared history, contaminating 25 years of memories. 25 years of marriage, of building a life together brick by brick, of supporting each other. Through his law school and my various career changes, of raising our daughter together through midnight feedings and teenage rebellions, all of it suddenly reduced to this single moment of calculated, deliberate public humiliation. I thought of all the late dinners I'd kept warm when he was studying obsessively for the bar exam, surviving on coffee and determination. I remembered all the corporate social events I'd attended as his devoted, supportive wife, smiling graciously and charming his colleagues while secretly feeling completely out of place among their designer clothes and expensive jewelry. I thought of all the personal sacrifices I'd made for his career advancement, including turning down a full-time director position at Haven House 5 years ago because he'd insisted we needed me available for entertaining important clients and maintaining our social obligations. "So, this is how you choose to end our marriage?" I asked, surprising myself with the remarkable steadiness in my voice, despite the complete chaos and devastation in my heart. "By humiliating me publicly in front of strangers?" "I'm not ending anything, Sarah," David replied with cold calculation, his arrogance reaching unprecedented heights. "I'm simply being brutally honest about what this relationship really is and what it's become over time. You can certainly stay in the house, keep your little charity job if it makes you feel important and fulfilled, and we'll maintain proper appearances for social and professional purposes. But I'm absolutely not going to pretend anymore that we're equals, or that this marriage represents anything more than a mutually convenient arrangement. Emma's knuckles were stark white as she gripped her fork with barely controlled fury, her entire body tense like a coiled spring ready to snap violently. She'd inherited David's razor-sharp intellect and analytical mind, but she'd also inherited my deep sense of justice and my fierce protective instincts. I could literally see her brilliant mind racing, processing not just what her father was saying, but how he was saying it, why he was choosing this moment, this method of destruction. "You think you're so incredibly successful, Dad," Emma said quietly, her voice carrying the carefully controlled tone she'd mastered in law school. The voice of someone who knew exactly how devastatingly powerful words could be when used as precision weapons. "You think Mom's work is completely worthless compared to your impressive achievements?" "It's not personal, Emma," David said dismissively, waving his hand as if brushing away an annoying insect that had dared interrupt his monologue. "It's simply economic reality, pure mathematics. Numbers absolutely don't lie, and the numbers clearly show that my financial contribution to this family far exceeds your mother's by any measurable standard." That's when Emma smiled, a cold, calculated, absolutely chilling smile that sent genuine shivers down my spine. It reminded me suddenly and disturbingly of her father, but channeled toward a completely different purpose entirely. "You're absolutely right, Dad. Numbers definitely don't lie," she said with deliberate calm. She reached into her structured leather purse, a graduation gift she'd splurged on for job interviews, and pulled out her iPhone with methodical precision. Which is exactly why what I've discovered through my research is so incredibly interesting and illuminating. I've been doing quite extensive research lately, actually. Comprehensive investigation into your firm's finances, your individual clients, and your specific business practices. David's wine glass froze halfway to his lips, the expensive Barolo suddenly completely forgotten. The color began draining from his face like water from a broken dam, and his confident, arrogant demeanor started to crack and crumble around the edges like old paint peeling from weathered wood. "What exactly are you talking about?" he asked, but his voice had changed completely and dramatically. The insufferable arrogance was gone entirely, replaced by something that sounded genuinely like fear, like a man who'd just realized he'd confidently walked directly into a carefully constructed trap of his own making. "I'm talking specifically about the Henderson account, Dad," Emma said, her voice steady as a surgeon's blade, each word precisely chosen and delivered for maximum psychological impact. "You remember Mrs. Eleanor Henderson, don't you? The 78-year-old widow who trusted you completely with her late husband's carefully planned estate. Sweet old lady who lived alone in that beautiful Victorian house in Evanston, the one who baked cookies for your office staff every Christmas." David's face went completely white, whiter than the pristine tablecloth beneath his now visibly trembling hands. The elegant restaurant seemed to fade away around us as Emma continued, her extensive legal training evident in every carefully chosen word, every strategic pause calculated for maximum dramatic effect. "Funny thing about having a daughter currently in law school, Dad, we learn exactly how to research public records with professional efficiency. Court filings, financial disclosures, estate documents, probate records. It's all public information, if you know precisely where to look and how to interpret what you find." Emma scrolled through her phone with deliberate, almost theatrical precision, like a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. Mrs. Henderson's estate was worth exactly $3.2 million when she hired your prestigious firm 2 years ago. Her husband had been a highly successful architect, very careful and conservative with money, extremely thorough with his estate planning and financial arrangements. She came to your firm specifically because she wanted to make absolutely sure her 4 grandchildren would be properly taken care of, that their college educations would be fully funded. The wine glass slipped from David's hand, but he managed to catch it before it crashed to the floor, his movements shaky and completely uncertain. His professional composure, the confident demeanor he wore like expensive cologne, was completely Gone now, replaced by the unmistakable panic of a cornered, desperate animal. Emma, you don't understand the legal complexities involved. He started weakly, but his voice was pathetic, desperate, nothing like the commanding presence he usually projected. Oh, but I do understand, Dad. Perfectly, actually. Her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who knew exactly what she was talking about, who had done her homework thoroughly and completely. Because you see, while you've been sitting here telling Mom how worthless her work is, how little she contributes to society, I've been systematically discovering what your version of success actually looks like in practice. I watched my daughter with an intense mixture of fierce pride and growing dread. Whatever she'd discovered during her investigation, it was serious enough to make David, a man who just publicly humiliated his wife without any hesitation, look genuinely terrified. For the first time in years, Mrs. Henderson thought she was signing standard routine estate management papers, Emma continued, her voice growing progressively stronger with each devastating revelation. Simple documents to protect her assets, to ensure her grandchildren's college educations were completely secure, to make sure her substantial charitable giving could continue seamlessly even after her death. But what she actually signed was a comprehensive, all-encompassing power of attorney that gave you complete and total control over her finances, her investments, her entire life savings accumulated over 43 years of marriage. The blood drained from David's face entirely now, leaving him looking gray and genuinely sick under the restaurant's warm, romantic lighting. Around us, the restaurant continued its quiet, elegant dinner service, completely unaware that at table 12, a marriage was ending and a career was about to be systematically destroyed. And you've been systematically draining that account, Dad, moving substantial amounts of money into offshore investments that happen to benefit your firm's senior partners exclusively. Investments that Mrs. Henderson never authorized, never even knew about, never would have agreed to if she'd understood what was happening. You've stolen over $2 million from a woman who trusted you completely to protect her family's future and her legacy. David's hands were shaking openly now, and I could see sweat beading prominently on his forehead, despite the restaurant's comfortable temperature and elegant atmosphere. That's textbook elder abuse, Dad. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable person, which in Illinois is classified as a Class 2 felony carrying up to 7 years in federal prison. But that's just for one victim, just one case. Emma's smile was razor sharp now, cutting through his remaining composure. And Mrs. Henderson isn't your only elderly client, is she? She's not even close to being your only victim. David tried, desperately to speak, but no words came out at all. His mouth opened and closed repeatedly like a fish gasping for air on dry land. Let me tell you about the others, Dad, Emma continued with prosecutorial precision. There's Mr. William Thompson, 81 years old, retired teacher whose pension you've been systematically draining for 18 months. Mrs. Dorothy Chen, 74, whose late husband's insurance settlement you've been moving into your personal accounts, the Patterson Family Trust, established for 3 orphaned grandchildren, now missing over $800,000. Should I continue? The color drained completely from David's face as he realized the scope of what Emma had uncovered. Each name she spoke hit him like a physical blow. But the Henderson case isn't even the worst part of what I've discovered, Emma continued, clearly savoring every moment of watching her father's carefully constructed world crumble completely. Because while I was investigating that particular case, I found something else entirely. Something much bigger, much more serious. Something that explains why you suddenly need a younger, more sophisticated partner who won't ask inconvenient questions. Emma paused dramatically, letting the tension build to an almost unbearable level. The restaurant around us had grown quieter, as if other diners could sense the gravity of what was unfolding. The FBI opened a formal, comprehensive investigation into your firm exactly 3 weeks ago, Emma said quietly. But her words carried the devastating weight of an earthquake. money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, and obstruction of justice. Your so-called successful career has been built systematically on stealing from vulnerable clients and washing money for some very dangerous, very powerful people. My world tilted completely off its axis. The elegant restaurant around us seemed to blur and shift as if I was looking at it through disturbed water. The man I'd married, trusted, built a life with was a criminal. Not just unfaithful, but a predator who targeted the most vulnerable members of society. The Kozlov organization, Dad, Emma added quietly. Russian money laundering through real estate transactions. The cartel connections in Miami. Drug money, human trafficking proceeds. All of it flowing through your legitimate law practice. The FBI has been tracking these connections for over a year. David's wine glass slipped from his trembling fingers, shattering against the floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent restaurant. How do you possibly know all this confidential information? David whispered, his voice barely audible above the restaurant's ambient noise, his professional composure completely shattered. Emma's smile widened with genuine satisfaction, and I could see the brilliant legal mind that had gotten her into Northwestern Law School working at full capacity. Because Detective Martinez from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has been dating my roommate from law school for the past 8 months, and when I casually mentioned my father's name during a dinner party conversation last month, Detective Martinez's immediate reaction was absolutely illuminating. He went completely white, excused himself from the table, and spent 20 minutes making urgent phone calls in the bathroom. The devastating irony hit me like a physical blow to the chest. While David had been sitting here mocking my work, helping abused women and homeless families, calling it worthless and meaningless, he'd been systematically destroying other families through his elaborate criminal activities. Every family I'd helped rebuild and restore, he'd been tearing apart somewhere else for profit. Detective Martinez couldn't discuss the case directly, of course, Emma continued, but he asked very specific questions about our family dynamics, about your work habits, about any unusual financial activity I might have noticed. That's when I realized my father wasn't just unfaithful. He was under federal investigation. David's face had gone from white to a sickly green color. Emma, you don't understand the pressures of corporate law, the expectations. Don't you dare, Emma interrupted with ice-cold fury. Don't you dare try to justify what you've done. You've stolen from widows, orphans, elderly people who trusted you with everything they had. You've funded criminal organizations with money stolen from the most vulnerable people in our society. You want to know what real contribution looks like, Dad? Emma's voice carried a strength that reminded me powerfully of myself at her age, before years of marriage had gradually worn down my natural confidence. Mom has helped over 200 women successfully escape domestic violence situations in just the past 5 years alone. She's provided safe, secure housing for 89 children who would otherwise be sleeping on dangerous streets or in abusive homes. She's personally, directly saved actual human lives while you've been systematically destroying them for financial profit. David tried desperately to speak, to mount some kind of defense, but Emma held up her hand with the commanding authority of a seasoned prosecutor presenting her closing argument. Mrs. Rodriguez brought her 3 children to Haven House last year after her husband broke her ribs, Emma continued, her voice growing stronger. Mom found them emergency housing, helped Mrs. Rodriguez get a restraining order, connected her with job training programs. Today, she's a certified medical assistant supporting her family independently. That's real success, Dad. That's what making a difference actually looks like. And here's the absolutely beautiful part of this entire situation, she continued, her eyes blazing with righteous anger and perfect clarity. While you were sitting here bragging about making partner, about your impressive $500,000 salary, about your success and sophistication, the FBI has been building an absolutely airtight case against you, using financial records that show exactly how much money you've stolen, from whom and where you've hidden it. Mrs. Henderson was just the tip of a massive iceberg. The restaurant felt like it was spinning violently around me. 25 years of marriage to a man I'd never really known, never really understood at all. All those late nights I'd attributed to hard work and professional dedication were actually criminal activity. All that financial success I'd been so proud of was built entirely on other people's suffering. The wire transfers to the Cayman Islands, the shell companies in Delaware, the cryptocurrency accounts, they have it all documented, Emma added relentlessly. Every transaction, every forged signature, every stolen dollar. The digital trail is comprehensive and absolutely damning. Jessica doesn't know any of this, does she? I asked quietly, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew the answer. David's complete silence was answer enough, but Emma wasn't finished with her devastating revelations. Actually, Mom, that's where this gets really, really interesting, Emma said, her eyes never leaving her father's increasingly panicked face. Because Jessica does know everything. She's known it all from the very beginning. Every intimate conversation, every shared secret, every moment of vulnerability, it was all part of her assignment. David's mouth fell open in complete, stunned disbelief. The woman he thought loved him, the person he was ready to abandon his family for, had been systematically betraying him from day one. Jessica isn't the ambitious young lawyer you think she is. She's not even really a lawyer at all. She's an undercover federal agent. Her real name is Agent Jessica Martinez, Detective Martinez's younger sister. She graduated from the FBI Academy in Quantico 2 years ago, specializing in financial crimes and undercover operations designed to infiltrate white-collar criminal organizations. The revelation was devastating in its completeness. David's entire affair, his justification for destroying our marriage, was built on an elaborate federal sting operation. The revelation hit David like a devastating physical blow. He actually recoiled in his chair as if Emma had reached across the table and slapped him hard across the face. The woman he thought he was leaving me for, the person he believed genuinely appreciated his success and sophistication, was actually working methodically and systematically to destroy him completely. "That's absolutely impossible," David stammered, his voice breaking like an adolescent's. She tells me she loves me constantly. She says it every time we're together. We've talked about our future, about traveling together, about the life we could build." Emma laughed, but there was no humor whatsoever in the sound. "She loves justice, Dad, something you've apparently forgotten the meaning of entirely. Every late night you spent with her, every business dinner where you thought you were impressing her with your wealth and power, every romantic moment you thought you were sharing. She was systematically gathering evidence, recording conversations with sophisticated FBI equipment hidden in her jewelry, photographing confidential documents with micro cameras, building the comprehensive case that's going to put you in federal prison for the next 30 years minimum." I felt a strange, complex mixture of vindication and genuine pity watching my husband's carefully constructed world crumble completely before my eyes. The man who just publicly humiliated me for dedicating my life to helping vulnerable people was discovering that his own success was built entirely on lies, crime, and betrayal. "The recordings are incredibly detailed, Dad," Emma continued mercilessly. "Conversations where you bragged about stealing from senile old fools, where you laughed about Mrs. Henderson's grandchildren never getting their college money, where you discussed moving cartel money through real estate transactions. Agent Martinez has hundreds of hours of recorded evidence." David's iPhone buzzed insistently against the table. He looked at it automatically, his movements robotic and mechanical, and his face went from white to distinctly green. "Let me guess," Emma said with mock sympathy that was more cutting than outright cruelty. "A text from Jessica asking you to meet her tonight, to discuss your future together? Maybe suggesting you go somewhere private and romantic where you can talk extensively about your relationship and your plans." David nodded numbly, looking exactly like a man who just watched his entire world explode in spectacular fashion. That's Not a romantic rendezvous, Dad. That's your arrest. The FBI is moving tonight, within the next few hours. They have more than enough evidence to charge you with 15 separate felonies, including the Henderson case and 7 other elderly victims whose life savings you've been systematically stealing over the past 3 years. As if summoned by her words, I noticed Detective Martinez and a woman who must be Agent Jessica Martinez entering the restaurant, moving purposefully toward our table with the unmistakable confidence of law enforcement officers about to make a significant arrest. Jessica looked nothing like the woman I'd imagined. She was professional, serious, wearing a simple black suit that screamed federal agent rather than seductive mistress. The asset forfeiture is comprehensive, Dad, Emma continued as the agents approached. The house, both cars, the vacation property in Aspen, all the investments, even your law license, everything purchased with stolen money will be seized tonight as evidence and eventual restitution to your victims. There's one final thing. Dad, Emma said, her voice softening with something that might have been pity. Something that makes this entire situation even more poetic than you could imagine. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman whose money you stole, whose grandchildren's futures you destroyed, she didn't hire your firm randomly. David looked up with desperate confusion as Detective Martinez reached our table, badge visible. Mrs. Henderson specifically requested your firm because Maria Gonzalez, a woman Mom helped escape domestic violence 3 years ago, worked as her housekeeper twice a week. Mrs. Henderson had seen Maria's bruises, had helped her contact Haven House, had driven her to Mom's office personally. When she needed legal help with her husband's estate, she specifically wanted to support the family of the woman who'd saved Maria's life. The irony was devastating. David's biggest victim had trusted him specifically because of my work, the same work he'd spent the evening dismissing as worthless. Mrs. Henderson talked about Mom constantly, Emma continued, as Detective Martinez began reading David his rights. She told everyone about the amazing woman at Haven House who saved families. She even wrote about Mom in her church newsletter. Your victim was Mom's biggest advocate. As David was handcuffed, Emma took my hand firmly. Mom, before Mrs. Henderson died last month, she wrote a codicil to her will. She left $50,000 specifically to Haven House in honor of Sarah Mitchell, the angel who saves families. The board wants you to take over as director. 6 months later, as the new director of Haven House with expanded programs funded by Mrs. Henderson's generous donation and the recovered stolen funds, I realized that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. David is awaiting trial, facing 30 years in federal prison. Emma just started her dream job with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, inspired by seeing justice served. Agent Jessica Martinez visited me last week. She wanted to apologize for the deception, even though it was necessary for the investigation. She told me that during her months undercover, listening to David disparage my work, she'd become genuinely inspired by what Haven House accomplished. She's now volunteering with us on weekends, teaching financial literacy to domestic violence survivors. Justice, it turns out, has a poetic sense of timing and an unexpected sense of humor. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more incredible tales of justice and redemption. Share your thoughts in the comments below.